Beneath the turquoise surface of a South Pacific lagoon, where sunlight cuts into the shallows like shafts through stained glass, the water appears calm, almost serene. But deeper, just past the coral shelf where the reef begins to slope into darker waters, something moves with slow certainty. A broad head sways slightly side to side, nostrils tasting the current, as stripes ripple across leathery skin. It is not in a hurry. It doesn't have to be. The tiger shark is never rushed, because the ocean always delivers. The tiger shark is built for ambush, not in the way of a cheetah pouncing through grass, but like a landmine, dormant, patient, and devastating once triggered. At over 3 meters long, this predator swims with unsettling grace, propelled by a thick, muscular tail that can accelerate its bulky frame into sudden bursts of speed. Its body bears dark vertical stripes, camouflage that fades with age but never entirely disappears, earning it its name. But unlike the cat it's named after, the tiger shark's predatory style isn't specialized. It is brutally universal. Everything in its path is fair game. Green sea turtles, asleep and vulnerable in the surf, are cracked open like melons beneath its powerful jaws. Albatross chicks learning to swim are swallowed whole. Even poisonous sea snakes, with their lethal venom and ribbon-like forms, are devoured without hesitation. The tiger shark's bite is not the clean, surgical strike of a great white. It is a methodical crush and consume operation. Serrated, saw-like teeth rotate through rows in its mouth, tearing and sawing through flesh, cartilage, and shell alike. When one set dulls or breaks, another rotates forward to take its place. It is a conveyor belt of destruction. But it's not just what the tiger shark eats, it's how it eats that sets it apart. Inside its abdomen lies one of the ocean's most bizarre digestive systems. The tiger shark's stomach folds into a Z shape, expanding dramatically to accommodate massive, indigestible items. Scientists have found birds, tires, goats, tin cans, and yes, even license plates inside them. This ability to process virtually anything has earned the tiger shark a reputation as the sea's garbage disposal. But this isn't recklessness, it's evolutionary brilliance. In nutrient-poor waters where meals are irregular, flexibility is power. Every bite might be the difference between survival and starvation in a habitat where abundance is deceptive. What's even more astonishing is their navigational range. Tiger sharks are extreme nomads. Satellite tagging reveals individuals cruising across entire ocean basins, diving thousands of feet deep before rising again to patrol coastal shallows. They follow warm currents and shifting food supplies, appearing in mangroves, coral atolls, open sea, and even freshwater river mouths. Unlike reef-bound predators or open ocean specialists, tiger sharks are comfortable anywhere and everywhere. They don't migrate like whales or follow a strict route like sea turtles. They drift with purpose, following the scent of chaos. One of the few events that brings multiple tiger sharks together is destruction. When storms hammer tropical islands, tiger sharks are often the first to arrive in the aftermath. Floodwaters flush livestock and refuse into the sea. Coral gets smashed, fish populations disoriented. The tiger shark doesn't just take advantage of the mess, it anticipates it. Scientists studying post-hurricane shark behavior have found that tiger sharks will congregate near recently battered coastlines, seemingly aware that food will come tumbling into the surf. It's not scavenging, it's calculated opportunism. Feeding frenzies in these moments are raw, frenzied displays of power. One shark bites into the carcass of a bloated sea turtle, jerking its head in a thrashing twist while others circle. There is no cooperation, only competition and an unspoken rule. Whoever bites hardest eats first. In seconds, the scene turns red, a haze of blood clouding the water as chunks are ripped away. Then, as quickly as it began, it's over. Bellies full, the sharks vanish back into the deep, leaving only scraps and silt behind. Despite their reputation, tiger sharks are not mindless killers. Their sensory suite is among the most advanced in the animal kingdom. Rows of electroreceptors line their snouts, detecting the faintest electrical signals emitted by fish mussels, struggling prey, or even the beating hearts of buried stingrays. Their vision is tuned for contrast, allowing them to detect silhouettes against moonlight or flashes of motion from wounded prey. And their hearing is acute enough to detect low-frequency pulses, sounds of distress, the thump of paddling legs, or the slow beat of a dying animal. Interestingly, Tiger sharks don't exhibit the same investigative behavior seen in great whites. While great whites often test with gentle bites before committing to a kill, tiger sharks bite first and assess later. This has led to unfortunate encounters with humans, particularly in murky water or during dusk and dawn, when visibility is low and the tiger shark's instincts dominate. Most attacks are not predatory but exploratory. Tragically for the victim, the shark's version of a taste test can be catastrophic. Yet these sharks are essential to marine ecosystems. By preying on the weak, the sick and the dying, tiger sharks help regulate populations and prevent disease from spreading. Their presence deters other predators from overhunting. And in some coral reef systems, areas with healthy tiger shark populations show greater biodiversity. Their broad diet may seem indiscriminate, but in reality, it allows them to play the role of environmental equalizers. Paradoxically, tiger sharks are both feared and vulnerable. Fishing pressure, bycatch in longline tuna operations, and the barbaric practice of shark finning have slashed populations in several regions. In some places, their decline has triggered ecological imbalances, overpopulated turtles destroying seagrass beds, or unchecked rays wiping out shellfish nurseries. Removing a top-level generalist predator like the tiger shark doesn't just silence a threat, it breaks a stabilizing force. And so the tiger shark remains a symbol of the ocean's paradox: beauty wrapped in danger, design wrapped in chaos, survival driven by hunger. Not the sleek, movie-made assassin like its cousin the great white, but something deeper, older, less dramatic, and infinitely more patient. A creature that doesn't chase glory, only opportunity. One whose strength lies not in specialization, but in relentless adaptability. In a world where every ripple hides a risk, the tiger shark thrives not because it's the fastest, strongest, or smartest, but because it never wastes a single chance to feed. Whether in a coral reef shattered by storms or a vast, featureless stretch of blue, it hunts with the same quiet confidence. Whatever comes its way, it can handle. And more often than not, it will. In the shallows of a mangrove-fringed lagoon, the seafloor lies still and silent. A smooth canvas of pale sand, broken only by scattered shells and the occasional ripple from the tide. At first glance, there is no sign of life. But just beneath the surface, half an inch of sediment away from invisibility, lurks a living trap, pressed flat against the bottom like a shadow left behind.
Nothing moves, nothing gives it away, until with sudden violence the sand erupts. A mullet darting too close disappears in a blur of motion.
Fins flash, water churns, and in less than a second, the attacker has struck and settled again, leaving behind only a puff of silt where the kill took place. The stingray doesn't chase its prey across the ocean, it becomes part of the ocean floor and waits for it to come within reach. This ambush strategy is the hallmark of one of the ocean's most understated predators. Unlike sharks or orcas that advertise power with bold presence and dramatic speed, stingrays are designed for deception and subtlety. Their bodies are flattened into wide discs, evolutionary adaptations that date back over 150 million years. Their eyes perch on the top of their heads, constantly scanning for movement above, while their mouths and gills sit beneath, pressed into the seabed. This top-down split allows the stingray to see without being seen and to strike without being detected. What makes the stingray's approach lethal isn't just its patience, it's its ability to detect prey without seeing it at all. Along their broad pectoral fins and around their snouts, stingrays possess clusters of electroreceptors called ampullae of Lorenzini, the same sensory organs that sharks use. These allow the stingray to sense the faint bioelectric fields generated by muscle contractions in nearby animals, so precise, in fact, that a buried ray can detect a buried crustacean beneath a layer of sand just by the rhythm of its heartbeat. Combined with pressure-sensitive pores along their skin that register the slightest shifts in water movement, stingrays become finely tuned detection panels, picking up the subtlest of disturbances around them. Once prey is located, the attack is brief and efficient. With a sudden flex of its massive wing-like fins, the ray lifts just enough to lunge forward and trap its target beneath its body. In some species, the fins themselves are used to corral and pin prey, curling around like a pair of arms. The mouth then does the rest, lined with rows of flat, grinding teeth ideal for crushing crustaceans, shellfish, and mollusks. Some stingrays, like the freshwater river stingrays of South America, feed heavily on snails and clams, their mouths adapted into biological mortars that crush calcium with ease. But the stingray's most famous and most misunderstood weapon lies on its tail. A long whip-like appendage, often twice the length of the body, lined with serrated barbs coated in venomous mucus. These tail spines are not used in predation but in defense, and only as a last resort. When threatened, the ray can flick the tail upward in a stabbing motion, embedding the barb deep into flesh. The venom causes intense pain, tissue necrosis, and in rare cases, depending on the species and location of the wound, death. Contrary to popular belief, stingray attacks on humans are rare and usually result from a defensive reaction when the animal is accidentally stepped on. Among the rays, there is vast diversity. The eagle ray, with its dappled skin and sharply defined wings, flies through the water column like a bird in slow motion, sometimes leaping clear out of the water in arcing jumps that baffle observers. The giant manta ray, its wingspan reaching over 6 meters, glides through the open ocean in graceful spirals, filter feeding on plankton clouds, but still sharing the same flattened morphology and evolutionary lineage. While mantas have lost the venomous barb, their brains are among the largest of any fish species relative to body size, a rare trait in the ocean's cold-blooded hunters. Some stingrays, like the electric rays found in temperate and tropical waters, have evolved an even more shocking defense. Rather than using a venomous spine, they deliver controlled bursts of electricity, up to 220 volts in some species, capable of stunning fish and deterring would-be predators. These rays have adapted kidney-shaped electrical organs near their heads, composed of stacks of electrocytes that discharge in pulses when provoked. Unlike eels, who use similar mechanisms to hunt actively, electric rays mostly use this jolt as a defense, or to immobilize prey long enough to be consumed. In coral reef systems, the southern stingray plays a more complicated role. As it glides across the reef flats, the gentle flapping of its fins disturbs the sediment, exposing hidden crustaceans and invertebrates. Small fish follow in its wake, picking off the revealed morsels, a dynamic known as commensal foraging. In this way, the stingray becomes a mechanical plow, unintentionally reshaping the feeding patterns of an entire micro-ecosystem. It doesn't compete for these scraps. It simply moves on, trailing a plume of fine sand in its path like smoke behind a passing vehicle. Despite their apparent serenity, stingrays are not defenseless against top predators. Large sharks, particularly hammerheads and tiger sharks, prey heavily on stingrays. The hammerhead's unusual head structure, broad and flat with eyes at either end, provides an evolutionary advantage in ray hunting. Not only does the shape allow for enhanced sensory input and stereoscopic vision across the sea floor, but it also acts as a physical clamp. Hammerheads have been observed pinning rays to the sand with the sides of their heads, holding them in place while delivering repeated bites until the prey stops struggling. Stingrays, in turn, have evolved some of the most extraordinary camouflage systems in the animal kingdom. Their skin contains specialized cells called chromatophores, which expand and contract to change the ray's color and pattern to match the substrate. Within seconds, a ray can shift from pale beige to speckled gray or even mottled green, blending seamlessly into whatever patch of reef, rock, or sand it chooses to rest on. This ability isn't perfect, but it's enough to vanish from sight when a predator's attention glances their way. The evolutionary story of the stingray is one of conservation through adaptation. Unlike many fast-evolving fish, stingrays have maintained their general body plan for millions of years, a testament to its effectiveness. Instead of chasing change, they've refined stillness. In habitats as varied as freshwater Amazonian streams, estuarine mudflats, tropical lagoons, and deep ocean basins, stingrays quietly dominate the lower levels of the predator hierarchy, not by overwhelming force, but by precision, patience, and design. They are not the killers that ignite fear in swimmers' minds. They are not the apex predators that dominate the headlines, but they are everywhere, woven into the sand, electric in their silence, deadly without warning. The stingray in all its forms represents a different kind of power in the ocean, not of spectacle, but of subtlety, an ancient blueprint perfected not for show, but for survival. In waters where flash often fails, the flatline assassin waits, and it does not miss. Off the jagged coastline of South Africa's Cape of Storms, the morning mist clings low to the waves. The ocean here is colder, heavier, dense with the scent of kelp and blood. Beneath the surface, where the rocky seabed drops into deeper channels, visibility fades into slate grey. It is here, among the chill upwellings and darting shoals of fish, that one of the most formidable hunters on Earth begins its approach. There is no sound. Only the silent glide of something massive, torpedo-shaped, and infinitely patient, approaching from below with deliberate control. This is not a chase, it is a ritual. The great white shark does not kill indiscriminately. Its hunting behavior is shaped by a blend of evolutionary refinement and chilling restraint. It begins with observation, spy hopping, a behavior more often associated with orcas, in which the shark vertically lifts its head above the water's surface. From this raised position, the shark scans the surface for floating silhouettes, shapes that mimic seals, sea lions, or injured birds. At the right angle, a sun-dappled surfer on a board is indistinguishable from a fat pinniped. But the great white doesn't immediately attack. Instead, it circles in silence, making several slow passes from below, adjusting depth and angle, studying its target. The shark's senses are attuned to far more than vision. Along the snout, thousands of microscopic pores detect bioelectric fields through specialized receptors known as ampullae of Lorenzini. These allow the shark to sense the faintest electrical impulses, the twitch of muscle fibers, the beat of a heart, even the static pulse of stress from a panicked animal. Combined with keen olfactory detection and vibration-sensitive lateral lines, this system forms a full sensory map of the prey's condition and location. Once satisfied, the great white commits to the strike, but not from the side or rear like many predators. Instead, it launches vertically from the depths below with explosive speed. In some locations, like Seal Island in False Bay, this ambush culminates in one of the most dramatic sights in the marine world: the breach. A 3-ton shark propels itself clean out of the water, jaws agape, twisting mid-air with a flailing seal locked in its mouth. The impact alone can be fatal. Teeth over 2 inches long clamp down with enough force to puncture bone and split a mammal in two. By the time the shark splashes back down, the prey is often already dying, bleeding into the cold sea. But not every attack ends in a kill. Great whites are notorious for what scientists call test biting. They will often bite their prey once, release it, and circle again. This behavior, sometimes mistaken as indecision or clumsiness, is actually part of a broader strategy. Seals are agile, combative, and dangerous. A single misstep can mean a torn eye or injured gills. The initial bite disables, the second ends it. In some instances, sharks will allow a wounded seal to swim a short distance before re-engaging, possibly to tire it out or observe changes in movement that make the next strike more predictable. This cold, deliberate behavior has been documented repeatedly in seal-rich zones across the globe, from California's Farallon Islands to the Neptune Islands of South Australia. In all these places, the hunting strategy remains eerily consistent. Ambush, disable, wait, kill. It's not about brute force, but methodical execution. Even in feeding, the great white shows precision. Rather than tearing indiscriminately, they often target the calorie-rich portions of the body: blubber, liver, muscle, discarding bones and less desirable tissue. A single large kill can sustain the shark for weeks. Yet this apex predator is not as invincible as its myth suggests. Juvenile great whites are vulnerable to larger sharks, including adults of their own species. Orcas, in rare but shocking encounters, have been observed targeting and killing great whites specifically for their nutrient-rich livers, surgically extracting the organ with a level of precision that suggests learned behavior. In areas where orcas frequent, great whites have vanished for months, avoiding waters they once ruled, their absence felt in the sudden surge of seal numbers and behavioral shifts among other predators. Despite this, the great white's ecological role remains unmatched. By preying on seals and sick marine mammals, it prevents overgrazing of fish stocks and keeps coastal food webs in check. Areas with healthy shark populations often show greater overall biodiversity, as the presence of top-level predators curtails the spread of disease and stabilizes mid-level consumer populations. The fear they inspire is disproportionate to the threat they pose. Shark attacks on humans remain exceedingly rare and more often result from mistaken identity during poor visibility or high prey activity near shore. One of the more mysterious behaviors observed in great whites is the so-called death spiral or corkscrew feeding pattern. After a successful kill, especially involving a large carcass, the shark will sometimes swim in slow, tight loops around the remains, biting at different angles, removing chunks of flesh with each pass. This spiral motion may serve to control buoyancy, regulate digestion, or maximize leverage during feeding. Whatever the cause, it reinforces the notion that nothing the great white does is without purpose. Curiously, These predators also exhibit signs of intelligence and memory. Some individuals return to the same hunting grounds year after year, following migratory prey with near-perfect timing. Satellite tagging has revealed journeys that span entire ocean basins, some great whites traveling thousands of kilometers between feeding and breeding sites. There is no fumbling guesswork in their routes. They follow ancient invisible highways etched by currents and inherited instinct. The great white's evolutionary lineage stretches back over 16 million years. It has survived extinction events, temperature swings, and shifting sea levels. Its ancestors swam alongside megalodons, battled ichthyosaurs, and thrived in oceans long gone. And yet, for all its survival prowess, the great white today faces one enemy it cannot outwit: humans. Caught for sport, killed out of fear, or caught as bycatch in longline fisheries, populations are declining. Protection zones have helped, but myths persist, and with myths come danger. Still, the great white endures. Solitary, powerful, and built for the cold calculus of survival, it remains one of the ocean's most sophisticated hunters. Not reckless, not monstrous, just efficient, lethal when needed, elusive when not. In every breach and bite lies a pattern honed over millennia, a living machine built not for destruction, but for balance. In the rituals of its hunt, the great white does not seek to dominate. It seeks only to feed, to survive, and to return to the depths where it began, unseen, but always there. The water here is darker, deeper, and filled with a low resonant hum that carries through the cold. In the fjords of Norway, where steep cliffs plunge into the North Atlantic, or off the windswept coast of Patagonia, or even along the icy frontiers of Antarctica, a silence hangs between waves that is often broken by one unmistakable sound: short bursts of clicking pulses, sharp whistles, and low-frequency groans. Beneath the surface, just beyond the reach of the human eye, the ocean becomes a network of voices. Somewhere in the blue, an orca pod is speaking. Orcas do not drift through the sea as solitary marauders. They travel in pods, tight-knit family units bound by blood, memory, and language. In one pod, the matriarch may be over 60 years old, her knowledge spanning generations, her experience guiding every hunt. Around her swim sons, daughters, grandchildren, a living archive of cooperative strategy and passed-down culture. Each pod develops its own dialect, its own vocal signature, and even its own preferred hunting techniques, passed down not by instinct, but by learned behavior. This is not a species that survives by brute force alone. It survives by intelligence, coordination, and precision. In the open ocean, orcas form into tight formations, communicating constantly with a complex system of echolocation clicks that map their surroundings and the position of their targets. When it's time to strike, the strategy changes depending on the prey. If it's a school of herring, the orcas corral them into a shimmering silver ball, a tactic known as carousel feeding. One by one, the orcas take turns slapping the fish with their tails, stunning dozens at a time before swallowing them whole. This is not chaos. It is choreographed assault. Each movement is rehearsed, each strike calculated, and every member plays a part. Elsewhere, tactics turn more violent. Near New Zealand and South Africa, orcas have been filmed targeting stingrays. These flat-bodied ambush predators, dangerous even to humans with their venomous barbs, are flipped onto their backs by a precisely placed nudge from the orca's snout. Once inverted, the stingray is rendered helpless, its orientation confused, its ability to flee neutralized. The orca then delicately removes the liver, leaving the rest untouched. In some cases, the stingray is released alive, dazed but still swimming. Whether this is wastefulness, play, or teaching behavior is still debated, but it reflects a chilling truth. Orcas don't just hunt for survival. They hunt with intention. But the most startling displays of orca intelligence occur when they engage with mammals. Along the rocky shores of the Valdez Peninsula in Argentina, orcas have developed one of the most dramatic feeding behaviors in the animal kingdom. Timing the waves, they surge up onto the beach itself, beaching their own bodies momentarily to seize seal pups in shallow surf. The risk of stranding is real, but the reward is high. These beach attacks are not common to all orcas. They are taught within certain pods and passed down like a hunting ritual. Young orcas practice the move, failing again and again under the watchful eyes of adults until they master the dangerous maneuver. This capacity to learn and teach, to observe and adapt, elevates orcas far beyond the role of oceanic brute. They are apex predators not just in title, but in methodology. In Monterey Bay and False Bay, their targets are even more formidable: great white sharks. When orcas enter the territory, great whites vanish, sometimes for months. It's not a coincidence. Orcas have been documented preying on great whites with surgical precision. Working in pairs, they corral the shark, flip it upside down, inducing a paralysis-like state called tonic immobility, and remove the liver with shocking efficiency. The liver, massive and packed with oil-rich nutrients, is extracted while the rest of the body drifts, untouched. This isn't just dominance, it's anatomical understanding. Whether learned through observation, experimentation, or generations of practice, the outcome is the same. The great white, predator of legend, becomes prey. What makes this even more extraordinary is how orcas adapt based on geography. Some pods specialize in fish, others in marine mammals. Some never eat sharks, while others live almost exclusively on them. Their vocalizations, behaviors, and social structures differ accordingly. In essence, orcas do not belong to one species-wide culture, but to many, each shaped by its environment and history. Some researchers now refer to these as ecotypes, subcultures within the orca population that may one day be recognized as separate species entirely. Communication among orcas is more than just navigation or coordination. It is emotional. Calves are coddled and taught. Adults share food. Mourning behaviors have been documented, pods carrying dead calves for days or even weeks. Mating is rare outside of pods, but when it occurs, it's carefully managed to avoid inbreeding. In captivity, orcas have shown signs of psychological trauma, depression, aggression, even self-harm, underscoring just how socially complex and mentally sensitive these animals are. In the wild, their emotional world is deep and multi-layered, shaped by bonds and memory as much as biology. Their intelligence, however, comes at a cost. Orcas have no natural predators, but they are not immune to the disruptions of modern civilization. Noise pollution from ships and sonar interferes with their echolocation. Fishing nets entangle their prey and sometimes them, and in some regions, pollution has loaded their tissues with toxic chemicals, passed from mother to calf through milk. Some pods, especially those reliant on dwindling fish populations, are declining in numbers. Others, like those that adapt to changing prey availability, continue to thrive, resilient through flexibility. Still, their power remains undisputed. Few creatures command such fear and fascination across the seas. Orcas are not killers in the conventional sense. They are tacticians, observers, teachers. In an ecosystem dominated by strength, speed, and size, the orca survives by something far rarer: knowledge. It learns, it remembers, it calculates, and it adapts. From frozen polar waters to temperate coasts, wherever there is prey to manipulate and a strategy to master, the wolf of the sea remains at the top, not because it must be, but because no one else knows the rules better. Far out in the open Pacific, beyond the reach of reefs and island shadows, a silence rests on the morning water. The sun hasn't yet cleared the horizon, but beneath the gently rolling swell, something ancient is on the move. A deep vibration passes through the sea, too low for human ears but loud enough to shake the bones of fish a kilometer away. A second tone answers, then a third, notes layered in eerie, liquid harmony. This is not random. It is not instinctive noise. This is a conversation wrapped in music. A humpback whale is singing. Below the surface, a male humpback floats in place, nearly motionless, his massive frame suspended in a vertical drift. Air bubbles trail from his blowhole as his song flows in rhythmic sequences, rises and falls, grunts and moans, high chirps that shimmer like sonar echoes. These songs are more than calls. They are long-form compositions, some lasting 30 minutes or more, and they evolve over seasons. Every male in a given region sings a nearly identical version, passed across the population and subtly modified over time like a living anthem. In some cases, researchers have traced entire song structures migrating from one ocean basin to another, carried by successive populations like a traveling symphony. The function of this singing remains only partially understood. Mating display is the most likely explanation, but the reach and precision of the sounds suggest secondary roles: territorial signaling, social cohesion, or even passive sonar to detect distant pods. What is certain is that this vocal behavior makes the humpback one of the most acoustically sophisticated mammals in the ocean, rivaling dolphins and even orcas in range and complexity. But sound is only one of the humpback's tools. Despite their reputation as gentle giants, humpbacks are capable of aggressive and strategic behavior, particularly when they feed or defend others. In the cold, nutrient-rich waters off Alaska or the Antarctic Peninsula, a different kind of battle plays out. Humpbacks arrive in pods, sometimes alone, sometimes in loosely coordinated groups, to hunt anchovies, krill, and small schooling fish. But unlike predators that pursue prey directly, the humpback constructs its own trap. Bubble net feeding is one of the most visually spectacular and conceptually complex foraging strategies in the animal kingdom. A single whale, or more often a group, dives deep beneath a school of fish. One or more members begin releasing columns of bubbles in tight spirals as they ascend. To the fish, the walls of rising bubbles appear as solid barriers, and in a panic they cluster together in the center. At that moment, the whales lunge upward, mouths open wide, breaking through the middle of the bait ball in a synchronized explosion of force and foam. Their pleated throats expand like parachutes, engulfing thousands of prey animals in a single sweep. Then, as they close their mouths and expel water through their baleen, only the trapped fish remain. It's a trap built not with teeth, but with air and planning. These feeding strategies require timing, spatial awareness, and a level of cooperation rare among marine mammals that are not related. Some pods include unrelated individuals who seem to team up for specific hunts, suggesting that bubble net feeding is not just instinctual but learned, a cultural practice passed down between generations and refined with experience. Not all humpbacks feed this way. Some slap their fins to stun fish. Others simply lunge through surface schools. But the bubble net, with its coordinated construction and perfectly timed strikes, is perhaps the clearest evidence of the species' intelligence as both individuals and collectives. Feeding season is short-lived. Feeding season. Humpbacks spend several months gorging in the high-latitude summer seas before embarking on one of the longest migrations in the animal kingdom, over 8,000 kilometers from polar feeding grounds to equatorial breeding lagoons. During this journey, they do not eat. A fully grown humpback, weighing up to 30 metric tons, survives entirely on the reserves of fat it builds during the feeding season. The path takes them past currents, predators, and ship lanes. Mothers with calves swim more slowly, their young tucked close to their sides, learning the rhythm of the open ocean by following the pulse of their mother's tail. The migration itself is not passive. Even here, humpbacks remain active participants in the ecology of the ocean. Along their path, they are known to interact with other marine life in unexpected ways. Most famously, humpbacks have been documented interfering in orca hunts. Whether out of defense, curiosity, or some complex instinctual drive, humpbacks have approached orca pods mid-attack, especially when the victim is a seal, dolphin, or even a grey whale calf. In several cases, humpbacks have placed themselves between the orcas and the target, slapping at the attackers with their massive pectoral fins or positioning their bodies to block access. Some individuals have scars from past confrontations. In one recorded incident, a humpback repeatedly lifted a seal onto its back to prevent orcas from reaching it. The reason behind this behavior is not fully understood. Some scientists suggest it may be a byproduct of a maternal instinct gone awry, a misdirected protection impulse. Others believe it may reflect some deeper altruistic tendency, though this is controversial. Regardless of motivation, the outcome is clear. The orcas retreat and the humpbacks, against all expectation, emerge not only as singers and feeders, but as defenders. Even their bodies reflect their versatility. Unlike the streamlined form of dolphins or the brute bulk of blue whales, the humpback's physique is built for maneuverability. Its flippers are the longest of any whale species, proportionally speaking, up to 5 meters long and lined with tubercles that reduce drag and enhance lift, like natural hydrofoils. These allow the whale to pivot sharply, roll mid-breach, or strike with considerable force. Their tails, wide and powerful, deliver enough thrust to send their entire body airborne in a breach, a feat not of showmanship, but of communication, dominance, or parasite removal. And yet, for all their size and power, humpbacks remain vulnerable. Ship strikes, entanglement in fishing gear, and noise pollution threaten them in increasing numbers. Their songs, which once traveled unimpeded across ocean basins, are now distorted or masked by the roar of container ships and underwater drilling. Still, they sing. Still, they migrate. The numbers are slowly recovering in many regions thanks to international protection, but their story remains a fragile one, testament to both resilience and the lingering impact of human activity. The humpback whale is not the ocean's most powerful predator, nor its most elusive, but it is among the most dynamic, singing, feeding, migrating and defending with an agency that challenges every old assumption about how marine giants behave. Its life is not defined by brute dominance, but by expression and intervention, coordination and response. In the cold currents of the feeding grounds, in the sunlit shallows of tropical bays, in the stillness before a bubble net breach or the sudden shadow of an orca, the humpback whale is never passive. It is present, purposeful, and in its own way profoundly strategic. Its song, strange and beautiful, may not tell us everything, but in the patterns of its travels, the elegance of its hunts, and the courage of its defenses, the message is clear. The giant does not only sing, it acts. The coral reef seems to rest under the weight of the midday sun, its ridges and crevices glowing with refracted light. Small fish flicker between anemones, and parrotfish grind noisily on algae-covered stone. But 20 meters beyond the edge of the reef wall, in the hazy turquoise distance where visibility begins to blur and shadows start to stretch, something hangs motionless, too still to be part of the scenery, yet too slender to command notice. It drifts parallel to the current, a narrow blade with silver flanks so finely polished they reflect the sun like a sliver of glass. No movement, no ripple. The barracuda waits. Camouflage, for most reef predators, comes in the form of coloration. Stripes, splotches, shifting pigments that blend into coral textures. But for the barracuda, invisibility is a trick of physics. Its scales are covered with guanine crystals that scatter light, creating a mirror effect that renders its body nearly indistinguishable from the surrounding water. From the front, its profile disappears entirely. From the side, it flashes like a quick glint of metal and is gone again. For prey, this reflection is often the first and only warning. The barracuda's body is a straight-line engine of acceleration. Long, lean, and almost unnaturally streamlined, it's designed to cut through water with minimum resistance. Its muscular tail delivers a whip-like burst that can launch the fish to speeds of over 40 kilometers per hour in less than a second. From a standstill, the ambush is instantaneous. One moment, the barracuda hangs still like a dagger frozen in time. The next, it's driven forward by a sudden, explosive contraction of muscle and fin, jaws already opening to reveal 2 rows of interlocking, fang-like teeth. Unlike the crushing molars of sharks or the filter combs of whales, the barracuda's teeth are shaped like surgical scalpels, narrow, sharp, and capable of slicing through flesh and bone with minimal resistance. These teeth are set into jaws that don't just bite but lock. Once closed around a fish, the jaws clamp like a vice. In some cases, a single bite will bisect a fish cleanly. In others, the barracuda simply removes a chunk and circles back, leaving the victim maimed and panicked, a strategy not of clean kills but of chaos. Though often solitary, barracudas sometimes operate in loosely associated packs, particularly juveniles or when food is abundant. In these instances, they don't coordinate in the way dolphins or orcas might, but they do use each other's presence to increase success. One barracuda flushes prey from hiding. Another, positioned ahead, executes the kill. The reef becomes a maze of danger zones, exits blocked not by pursuit but by anticipation. There's no need for a chase when the escape routes are already sealed. The barracuda's behavior takes an odd turn during twilight and full moons. In low-light conditions, their activity peaks. They become bolder, venturing closer to reef edges and into shallows, taking advantage of silhouettes created by prey against moonlit surfaces. It's during these hours that their affinity for reflective objects becomes more than a curiosity. Divers and swimmers have reported barracudas approaching or circling shiny gear, jewelry, watches, even camera housings. These gleaming items, mistaken perhaps for the flash of fish scales or injured prey, trigger a predatory investigation. While actual attacks are rare, the impulse reveals something fundamental. For the barracuda, a flash of silver in the water is a potential kill cue. In terms of diet, barracudas show opportunism within their limitations. Small fish like mullet, sardines, and snapper make up the bulk of their intake, but their sharp teeth and fast strike mean they can handle surprisingly large or elusive targets. They're not interested in a drawn-out hunt. Efficiency is the rule. Kill quickly, eat quickly, move on. But their efficiency can become vulnerability in unfamiliar or changing environments. In areas where artificial lighting, pollution, or noise disrupt natural feeding cues, barracudas have been observed misfiring, striking at floating plastic, even attacking their own reflections in camera domes or boat hulls. These instances are rare, but growing more frequent in overfished or high-traffic areas, suggesting that barracuda behavior, while deeply wired, is not infallible. They are guided by triggers, motion, glint, shadow, not careful evaluation. Their place in the ecosystem is uniquely precarious. Too large to be preyed upon by most reef predators, but not large enough to dominate open ocean systems, barracudas sit at the upper edge of the mid-tier carnivores. In healthy coral environments, they serve as regulators, keeping small fish populations in check, preventing overgrazing of algae and coral. But their impact fluctuates with the presence of other predators. In reef systems where sharks have been overfished or displaced, barracudas sometimes grow larger and bolder, expanding into niches previously out of reach. These shifts can destabilize reef dynamics, creating feedback loops that impact everything from coral health to invertebrate diversity. Their physiology reflects this in-between role. Barracudas have no swim bladder, which means they sink when still, forcing constant motion or hovering. This feature gives them rapid buoyancy adjustment for ambushes, but at the cost of long-term cruising efficiency. They are not made for migration. They are made for striking, for holding a position, motionless, until movement triggers muscle and instinct. As juveniles, they gather in shallow nurseries, hiding among seagrasses and mangroves, perfecting their ambush skills on shrimp and fry. Growth is rapid, but vulnerability remains high. Only a fraction survive to adulthood, and those that do carry the markings of their early training: the stillness, the burst, the bite. Seen in silhouette, a mature barracuda is an unremarkable outline, long, thin, featureless. But up close, it is something else entirely. The stare is unnerving, the mouth never quite closed, always revealing slivers of teeth. The gills pulse with slow rhythm, not from effort but from readiness. It is the kind of predator that doesn't need to move until the moment of impact. And by then, for its prey, it's already too late. There is no elegance in its strike, no ritual or call, but there is precision. In the complex symphony of the reef, where color and shape often rule survival, the barracuda is an outlier, a flash, a blur, a needle in the blue. And if it chooses you, there's no warning, only the aftermath. The surface of the ocean is deceptively calm, sunlight glinting off the water, a glassy mirror broken only by the occasional fin slicing through the blue. In the shallows off the coast of Florida, tourists point and cheer as a pod of bottlenose dolphins surfaces in unison, exhaling misty plumes from their blowholes before diving in synchronized arcs. It's an image that has, for decades, shaped how we see dolphins: playful, intelligent, social, and harmless. But beneath that familiar grin lies one of the most complex and, at times, unsettling predatory minds in the animal kingdom. Underwater, their world is ruled by sound. Dolphins navigate and hunt using echolocation, an ability so refined it borders on the supernatural. By producing rapid-fire clicks from their nasal passages, they send out sound waves that bounce off objects and return as echoes, forming a detailed acoustic image of everything in their surroundings. They can see the size, shape, texture, and even the internal structure of their prey. A dolphin can distinguish between a fish with a full stomach and one that's empty just by sonar feedback. In murky water or moonless nights, echolocation gives dolphins a constant, live-streamed map of the underwater world, a sixth sense that makes visual hunting almost unnecessary. But dolphins rarely hunt alone. They are social predators, and their hunting tactics rival those of wolves or even lions. In open waters, pods often herd schools of fish into tight, shimmering balls, using their bodies like living nets. Individuals take turns lunging through the mass, grabbing mouthfuls of prey, then retreating to let the next in line feed. In estuaries and shallow coastal zones, dolphins have been seen corralling fish onto mudbanks or even onto beaches, temporarily stranding them before flipping them back into their mouths with a flick of the snout. These maneuvers require coordination, timing, and trust, traits cultivated through complex social structures built around long-term alliances. Within a pod, not all dolphins are equal. Bottlenose males in particular form strategic partnerships, alliances that can last decades. 2 or 3 males may band together to control access to a female, guarding her from other males and increasing their chances of mating. These alliances sometimes merge into larger coalitions, forming networks of cooperation that shift over time, resembling political factions more than family groups. Such social sophistication is rare among non-human animals and is often compared to the power dynamics seen in primates. But with social complexity comes moral ambiguity. While dolphins may appear playful to observers, surfing waves, leaping for fun, and even riding the bow wake of boats, many of their behaviors reveal a darker side. Dolphins have been observed engaging in infanticide, particularly males killing calves they did not sire. By eliminating a calf, the female becomes reproductively available again, and the offending male increases his odds of fathering the next offspring. These calculated acts are not accidental. They are deliberate and often carried out with repeated blunt force trauma, using the dolphin's beak and tail flukes like clubs. Even more unsettling are instances of dolphins toying with their prey. Rather than killing immediately, some individuals have been seen tossing fish into the air repeatedly, allowing them to flee and then recapturing them over and over, until the fish is too injured to swim. Octopuses, with their sticky arms and escape tactics, are often treated this way, slammed violently against the surface until limp. While some scientists argue that this might be a method of disabling prey, others suggest a behavioral spillover, a form of stimulation, play, or even cruelty that blurs the line between necessity and excess. Then there's the bizarre case of pufferfish. In multiple locations, groups of adolescent male dolphins have been documented handling pufferfish in succession, passing them between one another like a toy. The fish, in response to stress, release a small amount of neurotoxin, tetrodotoxin, which in large doses is deadly, but in minute quantities it appears to have a narcotic effect. The dolphins become visibly relaxed, floating near the surface, mouths slightly agape, eyes half closed. Once the puffer's effects wear off, they repeat the cycle. While it's impossible to assign intent in human terms, the behavior is strikingly consistent and has led some researchers to suggest recreational drug use, intentional exposure to mild toxins for altered states. Despite these troubling behaviors, dolphins remain highly intelligent, capable of extraordinary feats of problem-solving and even tool use. In Shark Bay, Australia, some individuals use marine sponges on their beaks to protect themselves while foraging on the sea floor. This tactic is passed matrilineally, taught by mothers to daughters, and is evidence of cultural transmission, a hallmark of advanced cognition. But their intelligence also enables manipulation. Dolphins in captivity quickly learn how to influence human handlers, feigning disinterest to get treats, mimicking commands before they're given, or even deceiving trainers by hiding objects and presenting them later for rewards. In the wild, this intelligence plays out in subtler ways. They adjust vocalizations depending on social context, mimic the whistles of others, and even create individualized signature calls, acoustic names recognized across pods. Dolphins are also highly aware of their surroundings and the behavior of other animals. In regions where orcas hunt, dolphins often avoid open channels and stick to shallow water corridors. In these same regions, dolphins have been seen mobbing smaller sharks, ramming them repeatedly to drive them away. While they are not immune to predation, a coordinated pod of adult dolphins can be a formidable opponent, even to sharks. Their role in the marine ecosystem is significant, yet poorly understood. As mid to top-level predators, they regulate fish populations and influence prey behavior through presence alone. But their wide dietary range, varied across individuals and habitats, makes them unpredictable as ecological agents. In some cases, their predation may compete with commercial fisheries. In others, they inadvertently assist fishers, herding fish toward nets or even into pens, then stealing from the catch. Despite their complexity, dolphins are still vulnerable, entangled in fishing nets, targeted in drive hunts, or suffering from pollution-induced neurological damage. Their high trophic level makes them susceptible to bioaccumulation of toxins like mercury and PCBs, which can impact reproduction and behavior. In some populations, birth rates have dropped, while in others, increasing noise pollution from ships and sonar disrupts their communication, interfering with the very echolocation they rely on for navigation, hunting, and social bonding. The image of the dolphin as a benevolent, smiling companion to humanity is only half the story. Behind the charisma is a layered creature, highly intelligent, emotionally complex, socially strategic, and at times alarmingly violent. It is this duality that makes them so compelling. They are not just the cheerful mascots of the sea, nor are they monsters in disguise. They are something far more fascinating, predators shaped by cognition as much as instinct. And in the wide, wild ocean, where every survival strategy is tested by time and competition, it turns out that charm and cunning are just as effective as teeth and speed. At low tide, the shoreline is exposed like the raw underside of the ocean's skin. Pools of seawater glisten between jagged rocks, barnacles crackle in the sun, and seaweed drapes over boulders like wet cloth. But beneath this quiet intertidal rhythm, dozens of eyes are watching, antennae twitching, claws poised. A crab emerges from the shadow of a rock, not scuttling aimlessly, not scavenging scraps, but pausing, calculating, waiting. It is not here to feed, it is here to fight. Crabs are often dismissed as bottom-feeding janitors of the sea, creatures designed for cleanup duty, not combat. But this is a profound misunderstanding. Crabs are not just armored for defense, they are strategists. Their hard carapace is the outward shell of an evolutionary arms race, honed not just to resist predators but to dominate rivals. Across tropical mangroves, Arctic kelp forests and coral rubble fields, crabs are territorial, deliberate, and astonishingly complex in behavior. For every species that feeds on detritus, there's another that hunts, stalks, manipulates, and conquers. Consider the ambush tactics of the decorator crab. Camouflaged with pieces of algae and sponge attached to hooked bristles on its shell, it lies motionless against the reef substrate. When a small fish ventures too close, the crab lashes out with claws designed not only for crushing, but for precision grabbing. Others, like the larger swimming crabs, use their paddle-shaped rear legs to dart forward and clamp prey mid-stride. Fish caught in their grip are often shredded alive, their scales scattered across the sand like metallic confetti. But not all crabs rely on brute force. Some wield tools. In Indonesia, the boxer crab clutches a sea anemone in each claw, using them like living pom-poms, both to ward off attackers and to sting prey into submission. The relationship is mutual. The anemones get carried to new feeding grounds, while the crab gains a portable defense system. It's a rudimentary form of armament, but one that reveals intention, selection, and perhaps even foresight. Then there are the shell-swapping masters, hermit crabs. Unlike most crabs, their abdomens are soft and exposed, so they must find and occupy empty snail shells for protection. But choosing a shell is no haphazard affair. Hermit crabs inspect potential homes meticulously, evaluating weight, interior volume, and fit. If a shell is too large for one individual, it may hold onto it until others arrive, forming temporary vacancy chains, where crabs line up by size, waiting for the current owner to upgrade and leave a suitable hand-me-down. In these moments, social negotiation takes precedence over combat. But when competition is fierce, crabs will wrestle and even evict each other forcibly. Size alone doesn't guarantee victory. Cleverness and timing matter just as much. On land, one species stands apart from all others, the coconut crab. A terrestrial relative of the hermit, this behemoth is the largest land-living arthropod in the world. Adults can span nearly a meter across and weigh over 4 kilograms. Their claws are strong enough to crack coconuts, hence the name, and have been measured exerting over 3,000 newtons of force, enough to crush bone. Coconut crabs are not scavengers by necessity. They are predators when opportunity allows. They raid bird nests, hunt rats, and climb trees in search of food. With keen vision and a powerful sense of smell, they operate largely at night, dominating islands where few large predators exist. Their thick armor protects them from most threats, and their sheer size deters anything that might consider them a target. But they are not invincible. In some areas, adult coconut crabs have been documented cannibalizing their own kind, opportunistically feeding on injured rivals or freshly molted individuals who are momentarily defenseless. Territorial aggression among crabs is not limited to extremes like the coconut species. Even the humble fiddler crab, a small intertidal dweller found along muddy coasts, demonstrates complex behavioral battles. Males possess one massively enlarged claw, used not for feeding, but for display and combat. When defending a burrow, a male will wave his claw in a ritualized display, a semaphore of strength and intent. If an intruder approaches, a fight may ensue, more wrestling than striking, where claws lock and leverage becomes the deciding factor. The winner secures the territory, the loser retreats, often after suffering damage to his prized weapon. Some males even cheat the system, regrowing lost claws not to full strength, but with exaggerated size and hollow interiors, giving the illusion of strength with less metabolic cost. Deception, even in a creature with no spine, plays a role in survival. Crabs may be ancient, tracing their ancestry back over 200 million years, but their behaviors are anything but primitive. Their neurological systems, while compact, support a surprising degree of spatial awareness and memory. Studies have shown some species can navigate mazes, remember landmarks, and modify behavior based on prior encounters. Crabs in fishing-heavy areas have learned to avoid traps, while those in aquaria have been observed manipulating their environment, stacking objects or using shelter materials to shield against aggression. In regions where crabs dominate the benthic landscape, such as the kelp forests of the Pacific Northwest or the seagrass beds of the Caribbean, their presence shapes the entire ecosystem. By preying on grazers, they regulate algae growth. By digging and burrowing, they aerate sediment and redistribute nutrients. Their bodies, when molted or dead, become essential calcium sources for other invertebrates. They are both predator and engineer, feeding, building, defending. The crab's armor is not just a barrier against injury, it's a stage for chemical warfare. Some species secrete pheromones through their legs to signal readiness to mate or warn competitors. Others, like the shame-faced crab, produce a noxious odor to deter predators. And during molting, when the shell is shed and replaced, crabs release hormones into the water that can synchronize shedding across a group. A strange, silent form of mass vulnerability where survival depends on solidarity and concealment. Despite their defenses, crabs face numerous threats. Overharvesting, habitat loss, pollution, and warming oceans have impacted populations in many areas. Ghost fishing, where lost traps continue to capture and kill crabs, remains a persistent issue in commercial fisheries. And as reef and seagrass habitats decline, so do the shelters and hunting grounds crabs rely on. For a creature that has survived 5 mass extinctions, the 6th, driven by human activity, presents a different kind of challenge. Not one of adaptation, but of tolerance. And yet crabs persist. They are engineers, opportunists, and when needed, warriors. Whether wielding tools, cracking coconuts, or dueling with deceptive claws, their lives unfold in miniature dramas across tide pools, mangroves, and coral flats. Beneath their silence and sideways gait lies a life of calculation. Not passive scavenging, but active strategy. They are more than the sum of their shell and claw. They are, in their own armored way, rulers of their domain. In the dim green twilight of the continental shelf, where sunlight fades into gloom and the pressure squeezes against every surface, something ancient moves across the rocky seabed. It crawls slowly, deliberately, antennae sweeping the sand like sensors while armored legs test each crevice and ridge. Around it, the water hangs heavy with suspended silt. There are no flashing colors here, no choral fanfare. But within this subdued, cold terrain, the lobster rules. An armored survivor of deep time, equipped with one of the most formidable natural toolkits in the marine world. To understand the lobster, you have to let go of the myths. It is not a passive bottom feeder, or a sluggish delicacy waiting to be boiled. It is a predator, a scavenger, and when necessary, a brawler. Its body is a machine of evolution, segmented and jointed like a crustacean tank, with overlapping plates of calcified chitin providing both rigidity and flexibility. These plates, reinforced with biominerals and protein matrices, form a suit of armor that is lightweight but strong enough to repel bites and absorb collisions. It's not just protection. It's a living exoskeleton capable of changing with the seasons and the animal's age. That change begins with molting. Because lobsters grow inside rigid shells, they must periodically shed them in order to expand. The process, known as ecdysis, is anything but simple. It begins days in advance, as the lobster withdraws minerals from its shell and reabsorbs part of its inner skeleton to loosen its armor. Then, in a vulnerable and exhausting act, the animal wriggles out through a soft slit near its tail. The emerging lobster is pale, swollen, and defenseless, its new shell thin and gelatinous. For several hours it hides, breathing heavily, pumping fluid into its tissues to stretch the new carapace before it hardens. This is when even allies become dangerous. Cannibalism among lobsters is rare in the wild under normal conditions, But during molting seasons, particularly in crowded environments, it spikes. A soft-shelled lobster, unable to flee or fight, is a high-protein target. It's not personal, it's strategy. In captivity, the behavior is so common that lobsters are kept in individual containers. But in the wild, they manage space through dominance and escape, tools honed over millions of years of nocturnal skirmishes. Most lobster species are solitary and territorial. They excavate dens beneath rocks or in crevices, returning to them night after night like a fortress. Patrol routes are memorized, and intruders are confronted. When two males of equal size cross paths, combat begins with antennae jousts and intimidation displays. If neither backs down, the claws come forward. The crusher claw, a massive blunt appendage capable of exerting over 100 pounds of force, aims to grab and pin. The cutter claw, thinner and sharper, is used to tear or wound. During battle, lobsters release bursts of high-pressure urine from nozzles located beneath their eyes. This chemical cocktail communicates aggression, status, and readiness, transforming the murky water into a signal-filled battlefield. Some researchers believe the chemical spray is fine-tuned for dominance, a kind of liquid warning system unique among crustaceans. Their claws also produce underwater sound, not vocal but mechanical. When slammed shut quickly, they generate low-frequency pulses, like a snap that ripples through the water. These vibrations may serve as threats or as cues to rivals hidden in cracks or under sand. In the pitch-black world of the lobster's habitat, sound and chemical cues are often more useful than sight. Their eyes, while compound and sensitive to light, are poorly equipped for detail. What they lack in vision, they compensate for in spatial awareness and memory, often returning to the same shelter night after foraging expeditions that can stretch hundreds of meters. Though they are scavengers by necessity, lobsters are not limited to dead meat. They are ambush predators. Fish caught sleeping near rocky bottoms may be seized by lightning-fast strikes of the claws. Worms, mollusks, and sea urchins are fair game. In kelp forests, lobsters will climb to reach snails clinging to higher stalks. They tear through clamshells by bracing one claw and prying with the other. When food is scarce, they turn on smaller lobsters or molt-weakened individuals without hesitation. Their biology is built for efficiency under pressure. Lobsters are ectothermic, meaning their internal temperature matches their surroundings. In cold, deep water, this reduces metabolic demands dramatically, allowing them to survive on less food and to live extraordinarily long lives. Some specimens are estimated to be over 70 years old. Their blood, unlike ours, is blue, a result of hemocyanin, a copper-based oxygen carrier that works more effectively in low temperatures and oxygen-poor environments. It gives the lobster not only a different chemical makeup, but an evolutionary advantage in cold zones that would disable other predators. And despite their reputation for backward scuttling, lobsters are surprisingly agile. When startled, they contract powerful abdominal muscles to shoot backward in a burst of jet-propelled motion, escaping threats or retreating to their burrows. These escapes are often triggered by the subtle approach of octopuses, moray eels, or larger fish. But a full-grown lobster is not an easy meal. Its armor, its claws, and its awareness make it a gamble few predators take lightly. Lobsters are also ecologically significant. By disturbing sediments, they help oxygenate benthic environments. Their foraging clears dead matter that might otherwise build up. Their dens provide habitat for smaller species, and in some regions, their removal has caused surprising ripple effects. Overfishing of lobsters has allowed populations of sea urchins to explode, leading to overgrazed kelp forests and ecosystem collapse. As with all top invertebrate predators, their influence extends beyond what their silent movements suggest. Still, lobsters are not impervious to change. Warming oceans have shifted their distribution northward. Acidifying seawater threatens the mineral content of their shells. Fishing practices have altered population structures, skewing sex ratios and decreasing the number of older, genetically robust individuals. Climate change not only affects their physiology, but the dynamics of their prey and predators. These are slow effects, subtle, cumulative, but dangerous all the same. In folklore, lobsters have long been symbols of resilience, but their reality is more intricate than symbolism allows. They are survivors, not because they are passive, but because they are adaptable. They shed, they fight, they learn, they evolve. In the cold trenches of the sea, where little light reaches and pressure is unrelenting, Lobsters live not in fear, but in calculated readiness. Their red shells are not warnings. They are statements of armor, of age, of power earned in the shadows. Here, in the stillness of the benthos, among sediment drifts and algae-covered stones, the lobster reigns. Not loud, not swift, but prepared. A warrior of the deep, wrapped in red armor, ready for the next duel. From above, the ocean appears still, endless, calm, a vast canvas of blue stretching from horizon to horizon. But below the surface, this illusion of quiet dissolves. Every meter of seawater hides movement, tension, and design. Schools of fish shift direction in perfect unison, not by choice, but by necessity. Coral heads erupt with flashes of color and motion as prey darts into hiding. In the deeper zones, shadows pass silently, and with them comes silence. The hush of prey waiting to see if they've been spotted. This is not chaos, it is order. A living blueprint shaped by predators, not by their numbers, but by their presence. Ocean predators do not just hunt, they govern. Their existence creates behavioral patterns in everything beneath them. Tiger sharks cruising the seagrass beds of Shark Bay, Australia, never strike every turtle or dugong in their path. But their presence alone causes those herbivores to move, to avoid certain grazing zones, to become cautious. In doing so, these apex hunters indirectly prevent overgrazing of fragile seagrass meadows, ecosystems critical for carbon storage, fish nurseries, and water filtration. Where the sharks patrol, the habitat flourishes. Where they are absent, the balance unravels. This phenomenon, known as the ecology of fear, extends throughout marine ecosystems. Predators do not need to consume in vast quantities to control populations. Instead, they change behavior. They shift migration routes. They make prey alert, mobile, and less likely to overexploit the areas they forage. Just as wolves in Yellowstone transformed river paths by forcing elk to avoid certain meadows, so too do sharks, orcas, and other ocean hunters sculpt the very architecture of marine life by being seen or even simply sensed. On coral reefs, the story becomes more intricate. Reef ecosystems are some of the most diverse and productive environments on Earth, but also among the most fragile. Here, predators like groupers, reef sharks, and moray eels maintain a delicate balance between herbivorous and carnivorous fish. Without predators, mid-level consumers, such as damselfish or wrasses, can overfeed on smaller prey, including crustaceans that keep coral surfaces clean of disease and algae. In predator-depleted reefs, these changes spiral downward. Algae overtakes coral, coral dies, and the fish that once sheltered there vanish, unable to navigate the ecological vacuum left behind. Even the open ocean, seemingly devoid of borders or anchor points, is ruled by predation. Massive tuna, swordfish, and open ocean sharks carve invisible lanes through vast blue expanses. Schools of anchovies and sardines move in tight, ever-vigilant formations, driven by the anticipation of ambush. Migratory paths of whales and sea turtles are shaped not only by food availability, but by where predators gather. These massive prey species, too large to be hunted easily, still react to the presence of orcas or large sharks with caution, detouring across thousands of kilometers to avoid areas of high risk. In this way, the predators write invisible lines across the sea, corridors of safety and danger that influence entire food webs. The impact of apex predators also reaches the smallest scales. In deep sea systems, where food is scarce and sunlight absent, species like sleeper sharks and colossal squid engage in long, slow-motion arms races of adaptation. Here, predators regulate the slow recycling of organic matter, consuming the dead and dying before disease or decomposition spreads. In polar regions, leopard seals control penguin and fish populations that, in turn, control krill grazing. Each layer is connected, each predator a keystone in a structure too vast and too intricate for linear logic. And yet increasingly, these top-level predators are vanishing. In the last century, global shark populations have declined by more than 70%. Industrial fishing, often through long-lining, trawling and bycatch, removes millions of large predators annually. Tuna are targeted to the brink of collapse in some regions. Orcas, contaminated by bioaccumulated toxins, suffer reproductive failures. Coral reef predators like groupers and large snapper are fished down to juveniles in many island nations. As each predator disappears, the system does not collapse all at once. It buckles slowly, subtly but undeniably. The absence of predators creates a vacuum of control. Prey species explode in number, consuming beyond sustainable levels. Mid-tier predators, once checked by larger threats, grow bold and dominant, suppressing smaller creatures and upsetting the food web. In seagrass meadows, dugongs graze unchecked, leading to habitat erosion. On reefs, algae smothers coral as herbivore behavior shifts in response to lost threats. In open waters, jellyfish, poorly regulated by declining fish and turtle populations, bloom in vast numbers, consuming fish larvae and clogging ecosystems that once teemed with balance. The ocean's chemistry responds too. Coral bleaching accelerates not just because of warming, but because of shifting fish populations that once kept symbiotic relationships in check. Dead zones expand as predator loss leads to trophic cascades that shift oxygen demands and bacterial growth. Even carbon cycles are disrupted. Seagrasses, mangroves and coastal habitats once protected by predator-induced grazing patterns now face degradation. With them go vital carbon sinks. Yet, amid this erosion, there are signs of recovery when predators return. Marine protected areas, when properly enforced, have seen rapid rebounds. In places where reef sharks were once wiped out, their return led to a revival of coral health within a decade. In kelp forests off California, sea otters, though not top predators globally but apex within their niche, keep urchins in check, allowing kelp to regrow and support diverse fish populations. These examples are not isolated miracles. They are evidence of resilience, of systems waiting for equilibrium, held in tension by the threads predators spin through their very presence. The code of the ocean is not written in laws, but in movement, risk, and memory. Fish that dart erratically, coral that grows without encroachment, currents that carry nutrients rather than jellyfish blooms, all respond to predation, even the fear of it. When predators patrol, ecosystems remain dynamic but contained. When they vanish, boundaries dissolve. It's tempting to see ocean predators as separate from us, figures of drama, subjects of awe, threats or spectacles. But the truth is simpler and more urgent. They are infrastructure, living forces that stabilize, balance, and recycle. Their survival is not a curiosity, it is a necessity. In the vast orchestration of life beneath the waves, predators conduct the tempo. They keep the sea from stagnating. They prevent its silence. Their code, ancient, unseen, but deeply felt, runs through every reef, trench, and tide. And if we break that code, we do not just lose the hunters, we unravel the sea itself.